Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back for another Total War news video with the Terminator. So Creative Assembly is giving Troy a Total War Saga 2 new coats of paint, with the Mythos campaign, which will include more mythical units, have a story revolve more around the mythology of the story of Troy, and generally give the game the proper fantasy experience it absolutely should have come with from the start, as well as a DLC which casts aside the mythos of the Great Bronze Age conflict to bring history into the spotlight, taking away all mythological units, powers, for a purely historical gameplay experience. Lots of YouTubers out there are currently covering what we know so far about the announcement, but to be honest, what we know is pretty limited at the moment, other than the fact that we're getting these modes. The Mythos side will come with more fleshed out fantasy type storylines and mythical units, and that the game is getting some overhauled campaign visuals and battle maps. So instead of deep diving into what we know so far, I'm going to tell you why this move by Creative Assembly is possibly a good and a bad thing. Why Troy, in all honesty, definitely needed this from the start, but also why as historical fans will probably be disappointed, and ultimately why I think this is going to flop. When Troy first launched, as with many players out there, I downloaded and played the game for roughly 3 to 4 hours and decided I really didn't like it. The battles were absolutely terrible for various reasons. The unit diversity was almost as limited as Total Wars get in that regard. The diplomacy system was deeply broken. There were no naval battles in a war that had major naval battles. And last but not least, it had a serious identity crisis. CA created this experimental saga that had no idea what it was, and they just ran with it. So Mythos is CA's attempt to correct this, with a mode that will be fully mythological and a mode that is fully historical, though you and I both know that the bulk of the effort will go into the Mythos side of things, as there's not a whole lot historically to go by, and at the moment anyway, the fantasy market is much more lucrative, so makes sense from a business perspective. Let's also not forget that the game has been patched quite a bit since launch, so some of the issues that I started off with have been resolved, but there's still a lot of work that can be done. Troy was a perfect example of why you can't go the middle way with Total War games. It just didn't work. You can't have historical accuracy in a game that has single entity and mythical units. It should have been an Age of Mythology type Total War game from the start that made the most of what the conflict of Troy was known for. Mythical units, epic quests, stunning visual effects, and proper mythical gameplay mechanics. This is why this announcement is a great thing. Creative Assembly heard and listened, and now they're doing something about the identity crisis baby they created, and I am honestly really happy that Troy is getting that treatment. But I don't think it's gonna work, and here's why. We've just gone through 5 months of continuous, almost weekly Warhammer 3 content. Trailers, gameplay reveals, faction and roster reveals, dev interviews, battle map teasers, you name it. The Warhammer 3 hype train shot out of the station and has been at full speed ahead for the last 5 months, and fantasy players have been lapping it up. That is to say, they've been watching everything very closely, they've been talking about it on Reddit, on YouTube, and they've been playing Warhammer 2 to get into the mood and prepare themselves for the ultimate Warhammer release, the final game in the series. So let me ask you, why should they play a fantasy Troy right now? I mean, there's a 3-month hiatus in Warhammer 3 news, but that doesn't mean they're going to drop everything to play Troy. And by the time Troy comes out, by the way, on Steam, Warhammer 3 news is just going to hype up again. They're going to keep playing Warhammer 2, especially with the latest Beastman rework, so there's no reason why they would pick up Troy. There's just no real appeal for fantasy players right now, especially with Troy's track record, and this is what bothers me most about this announcement. This is a saga game, so how much effort is going into it is already in question, but on top of that, you're right smack in the middle of promoting the biggest fantasy game you've ever created, and you decide to go back to a saga game with the hope of attracting fantasy players. I don't get it. What am I missing here? Historical fans won't play it either. We're busy waiting for the next medieval or empire, playing the crap out of modded historical Total Wars. We don't have time to play a lackluster historical saga or the money to buy it on Steam, so why bother? I mean, the Bronze Age is a huge, fantastic era of human history that can absolutely be turned into a Total War game, but Troy historically is on the more limited side compared to everything else we know about the Hittites or the Egyptians. It's just not good enough. The only reason I'd play the historical mode of Troy is if it comes with more unit diversity, if it comes with naval battles, and if it comes with historical gameplay mechanics, and at the moment I have no confidence that any of that will happen given that Sophia is working on both modes and that the teasers have all been focused on the fantasy side of the game. That's clearly what they're banking on making a success, which leads me to my final point here. Troy is still a saga game. There is a limited amount of effort and money going into it. This isn't meant to be groundbreaking. It's meant to make as much money as possible with as little effort as possible. I mean, look at Thrones of Britannia, a game that pretty much lifted Attila and put it in Viking-era Britain that impressed with its battles, but failed in almost every other respect. So much about Troy, just like TOB, is still just a bit wrong. The lack of unit diversity is shocking, and I know that the Mythic side will get a lot more units now, but honestly, if the current rosters that we have for each faction don't get a bit more love and more additions to it, this is still a big reason why I won't play it. There are no naval battles. I mean, Hydra is going to be in the Mythic side, which, let's face it, would be incredible in a naval battle. Yes, we haven't had naval battles for a while now, and yes, there shouldn't be any reason why CA would suddenly drop everything to make them again, but we're talking about Total War here set in a Mediterranean conflict where naval battles were a thing. I mean, half the map is covered in water, where 1,000 ships were launched to carry an army across the Aegean to Troy. It's just another aspect of a conflict that could be explored and done well, but CA does not bother. That's the problem here. And lastly, Troy's battles are still a mixed bag, in my opinion. Yes, battle maps look fantastic, and the structure of the terrain is beautifully done and different and fresh, and makes for great gameplay, but battle animations are still just not good enough and wanting for more. The focus is squarely on infantry gameplay, which is fine, but it's a limited focus in a Total War game with things like centaurs or chariots not really adding too much to it, not really being all that effective at anything. And let's not forget, the siege battles still heavily favor the defender. For me, all of these issues mean Troy is still just a saga, a game that people can just sweep under the rug and say, I'll wait for the next major title. It's a game that tries some new things that work, some things that just don't work, and doesn't try things that would have made it great. All in all, I am happy that Creative Assembly are going back to try to do something new about it. I'm looking forward to more news about what we're going to hear about the work and effort that's going into making Troy a great Total War game. But I'm worried. I'm worried, even though they're not pulling the plug like they did with 3K, that they're not going to be fixing the core issues that Troy came with, and they're still going to be trying to appeal to both audiences in a way that just does not work. More effort and energy means more content for players of both camps to hopefully enjoy, but unless some of these core issues are resolved, I don't see the game being much better than it currently is. And with the Warhammer 3 hype train, I don't see fantasy players flocking to it either. That's it for today, guys. These are my thoughts on the Mythos announcement for Troy. I essentially predict that it won't perform very well for Creative Assembly unless some of these issues are resolved, and unless somehow the fantasy player base decided that Troy is a nice distraction while they wait for Warhammer 3. But for now, I highly doubt that. You may or may not agree with some or all of these thoughts, which is totally fine, guys. I'm not here to spark a massive argument on Total War. I'm here to express my opinion and thoughts about the announcement and why I personally don't think it will be a success. But I am humble enough to accept I might be wrong. Only time will tell. I really do hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, give it a like and absolutely drop any questions or thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about Creative Assembly's announcement and my analysis here? Subscribe for more Total War content, gameplay, and news, and thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.